I am a fat Bible scholar. An essay on gluttony, Sarx, and BBLs. I am a fat Bible scholar. Did that word make you wince? It's okay. It made me wince too. It even makes me wince to write after I just had a Christmas sugar cookie for breakfast because I'm not allergic to whimsy. But when I dare to take up space online with my queer, progressive readings of the Bible, I also happen to take up physical space. One of the most iconic hate comments that I've ever gotten was, "Were both of your hands stung by bees?" Nope. They're just fat hands. And yes, this comment makes me laugh every time I think about it. A less original comment I get all the time, on the other hand, is, "Well, what does the Bible have to say about gluttony?" Well, the Bible says that gluttony is a sin, but it may not look like what you think it looks like. You see, gluttony is typically viewed as the excessive or overindulgent consumption of food and drink, often linked to a lack of self-control or an unhealthy desire for pleasure. It is considered a sin because it reflects a prioritization of physical desires over spiritual discipline and reliance on God. Here are some passages that are typically cited in support of the position that gluttony is sinful. In the historical context of these passages, gluttony is often depicted as a form of excess at the expense of others. In Proverbs, the warning against drunkenness and gluttony reflects the concern that indulgence leads to poverty, which then burdens the community through the exploitation of others. Paul's goal in Philippians is to warn against certain false teachers who prioritized their own selfish desires and earthly comforts over a life of following Christ, by stating that their God is their stomach. Paul is metaphorically linking their indulgence in bodily pleasures, which could include gluttony, but also other forms of excess, to idolatry. These individuals place their ultimate security and satisfaction in their material needs and desires rather than in the eternal promises of God. Finally, in Deuteronomy, the gluttonous and rebellious son represents a disruption of familial and societal order, with the punishment serving as a means to protect the community from behaviors that could undermine social stability. In each case, gluttony is not merely a personal indulgence, but it is linked to a disregard for the need and welfare of others, fostering exploitation and imbalance within the community. But does fatness equal gluttony? In today's context, fatness is often related to systemic racism and food insecurity. In many societies, especially in the United States, racial minorities, particularly Black and Indigenous communities, have been disproportionately affected by food deserts, areas with limited access to affordable and nutritious foods. These communities often have fewer resources and less access to healthy food options, leading to higher rates of obesity. Additionally, the fear of fat bodies is directly tied to the fear of Black bodies. The goal, therefore, is clear: to stay thin is to avoid Blackness and poverty at all costs. The stigma of fatness intersects with racial stereotypes, reinforcing harmful ideas that link body size to lack of discipline, rather than reorganizing the broader societal structures that contribute to food insecurity and the over-reliance on cheap, unhealthy food in marginalized communities. The system was built with careful intention. Keep the poor people poor, while the rich hoard the wealth for themselves. In the Bible, the sin of gluttony is directly tied to the hoarding of wealth and resources without consideration for the broader community. When you look at the population hoarding wealth and resources, you do not see fat bodies. You see doctored ones, you see BBLs, hair extensions, plastic surgery, Botox, trainers, dietitians, personalized meal plans, makeup and skincare brands, lasers, needles, and bones. In our context, gluttony looks like the rich getting richer and the skinny getting skinnier. I want you to hear me say this. Thinness is not sinful, and fatness is not sinful either. The flesh isn't the problem. Christian traditions have inherited a suspicion of flesh, imagining it as the seat of sin, temptation, and moral weakness. But this disdain is rooted in later mistranslations and misinterpretations of, you guessed it, Paul. When Paul uses sarx, flesh, in Greek, he is not talking about the physical body as inherently bad. Rather, sarx is shorthand for a way of being in the world dominated by systems of power, oppression, and attempts at self-sufficiency apart from God. It is not an anatomical, yet centuries of interpreters have collapsed sarx into embodiedness, moralizing the body and perpetuating suspicion of physicality, sexuality, and corporeality. This misreading becomes especially ironic when we consider that Paul likely did not possess an ideal Greco-Roman body. His own letters hint at physical limitations, illnesses, or disabilities, and later traditions describe him as small, stooped, or unimpressive. Paul's authority was never rooted in physical perfection, but in vulnerability, humility, and obedience to God. To weaponize his language against the very bodies he insisted God chooses, weak, ordinary, and unglamorous, is to miss his point entirely. The body isn't evil, fat, thin, short, tall, abled, disabled. The sin of gluttony is using wealth power, and hoarded resources to convince you that your body is the problem. The highest form of resistance that you can take in the blatant rise of misogyny, racism, ableism, and classism, bolstered by Christian fascism, is to take up space. Take it all up, spiritually, emotionally, and noisily. And yes, even and especially physically. This is basically a long post to say that, yes, I am a fat Bible scholar. And no, I am not a gluttonous one. And also no, my hands were not stung by a bunch of bees. Hope that clears things up.